Let's set the scene. Picture the absolute dead of winter. It's December 1887. The wind is just howling like a banshee through the freezing, pitch-black darkness of the Wyoming Territory. It's the kind of night that claims lives and breaks hearts. But out of this bitter, creeping cold, a spark is about to ignite. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're looking at A Love That Made History, the legend of Jack and Libby Thornton. We are going to see exactly how two vastly different worlds collided on one desperate night, leading to a partnership that literally helped build a state. Now, if you visit the museum in Cheyenne today, you'll actually find this exact plaque commemorating their legacy. It reads, "Proof that love can conquer all and that the greatest adventures begin with a single act of kindness." I absolutely love starting with this because it completely grounds our story in physical, recorded history. This isn't just some frontier fairy tale, right? This is a documented reality. It's a modern-day tribute to a partnership that totally defied the odds and left a permanent mark on the map.
So how does this all happen? I mean, it almost sounds like the setup to a fiction novel, doesn't it? How exactly did a penniless, freezing nurse with a completely ruined reputation and a millionaire cowboy end up changing the medical and cultural history of the American West? Well, it all comes down to a massive collision of character, utter desperation, and an environment that demanded absolute resilience. Let's go back to that dark, freezing night. Elizabeth Libby Montgomery is sitting on a hard wooden bench in an unheated train station in Cheyenne, and it is brutally cold. Her lips are literally turning blue. The last train heading east? Yeah, that departed 3 hours ago. And the next train isn't even scheduled to arrive until morning. That's 12 long hours away. And that's assuming the blizzard doesn't block the tracks entirely. She's sitting there with only $3 to her name, she's already been turned away from a boarding house, and she's just clutching this small leather medical bag. She is quite literally facing the prospect of freezing to death before dawn. So you might be wondering, why on earth is Libby sitting on that freezing bench in the first place? Well, back in Philadelphia, Libby was a highly skilled charity hospital nurse. But when a doctor named Harrison tried to force himself on her, Libby fought back. In fact, she broke his nose with a bedpan. But instead of getting justice, she faced the rigid, victim-blaming society of the East Coast. Nobody believed her, she was dismissed, and her career was totally ruined. But the Wyoming Territory? It was different. It was pragmatic. Out here, you were judged by what you could actually do. And a trained nurse wasn't a scandal. She was rarer than gold. And then that is exactly when Jack Thornton enters the picture. Jack arrives at the station riding this magnificent black stallion, wrapped up in a heavy coat, just trying to escape the storm. And he sees Libby shivering, practically frozen to death, still holding that small medical bag. Now, Jack doesn't stop to ask for her whole life story right then and there. He just performs that single act of kindness we saw mentioned on the museum plaque. He scoops her up, carries her right across the street to the Cattleman's Hotel, demands their absolute best room, hot food, warm blankets, and just make sure she is safe. He completely respected her boundaries too, leaving her alone to change into dry clothes that were donated by the other guests. But here's the thing. Jack didn't just save Libby's life out of pity. Jack happens to be the owner of the Double T Ranch. This is a massive, 50,000-acre working cattle and horse empire that employs up to 100 men during roundup season, and it's incredibly dangerous work. Men get hurt all the time. Broken bones, snake bites, severe cuts. Jack had been searching everywhere for a doctor, but none of them wanted to leave the cushy, profitable cities for the rugged frontier. So when Jack finds out Libby is a trained nurse, he immediately offers her a well-paying job as the ranch's dedicated healer. When Libby agrees to try out the position and finally travels out to the Double T, she is just absolutely stunned. Inside her new, warm, comfortable cabin was a fully equipped, incredibly modern medical office. We're talking examination tables, massive cabinets of supplies, top-tier surgical instruments. It was honestly better equipped than some hospitals back east. He had actually ordered it all months prior, just hoping, praying he'd find someone skilled enough to use it. It's a detail that brilliantly illustrates just how serious Jack was about the medical care of his men and how much he immediately valued Libby's rare skills. And she, for sure, proved her skill. Now, the pacing of life on the ranch was usually pretty steady, but it could turn chaotic in a total heartbeat. One evening, an 18-year-old cowboy named Danny gets trampled by a spooked horse. His chest is completely crushed. He's bleeding internally. Jack immediately rides out to fetch a city doctor, but Libby knows there is zero time to wait. She launches straight into her emergency protocol. Clear table. Gather hot water. She doesn't hesitate for a second. She performs immediate, life-saving internal surgery right there in the bunkhouse. By the time the city doctor finally arrives,
He has to admit that Libby's surgical work is as fine as any top surgeon in Denver. So after saving Danny's life, Libby very modestly tells Jack it's what any trained nurse would have done. But Jack just looks at her and says, "No, it's what you did, and it's why I love you." Right there, under the Wyoming stars, their professional respect blossomed into an incredibly deep, genuine romance. By June of that very same year, they were married in what became the biggest social event of the season, and Jack gifted Libby a beautiful gold locket, engraved with the words, "Forever and always, JT."
But as we all know, the past rarely stays buried. Fast forward a bit to the spring of 1889. Dr. Harrison, the very same man who had assaulted Libby back in Philadelphia, travels all the way to Wyoming just to accuse her of practicing medicine without a license. He even brings a federal marshal right onto the Double T Ranch. But Harrison completely miscalculated the environment he just walked into. Jack literally punches Harrison straight into the dirt, and all the local cowboys immediately back him up. They take the whole matter straight to a proper courthouse hearing in Cheyenne.
And this is the crucial point: how the frontier justice system responded. The judge didn't just dismiss Harrison's case. Dozens of patients, the local doctor, and get this, even the territorial governor, stepped up to testify to Libby's incredible skill and character. Meanwhile, Harrison was exposed as a bitter man who had actually been fired from his own hospital back east for drinking and sheer incompetence. The judge officially recognized Libby's nursing certificate for the entire Wyoming Territory and practically ran Harrison out of town. It was just the ultimate victory over her dark past. Free from those shadows, the Thorntons turned their incredible partnership into a truly massive legacy. And the sheer scale of their impact is astounding. The Double T Ranch expanded to over 100,000 acres. Libby went on to establish Cheyenne's first real hospital, and she founded a nursing school to train other women for remote medical care. Jack served in the legislature, becoming a heavy advocate for Wyoming's statehood. They even built an entire town on their southern border. They appropriately named it Thornton, Wyoming, complete with schools and homes for all their employees' families.
And that legacy absolutely didn't stop with them. It was carried forward by their 3 children. Thomas followed right in his father's political footsteps and became a state senator. Jackson Jr. followed his mother's healing hands and became a doctor who established hospitals all across the state. And their daughter, Rebecca, took the reins of the land, becoming a dedicated rancher who passed down the family stories of perseverance to her own 6 children. The whole family really became the ultimate embodiment of the American dream out in the West. Which brings us right back full circle, back to the physical evidence that still exists today. If you visit that museum in Cheyenne, you don't just see the plaque we started with. You can stand right in front of the very same small leather medical bag that a freezing Libby Montgomery clutched on that wooden bench back in 1887. Right next to it sits Jack's wedding ring and a copy of their marriage certificate. These are the physical anchors to a true legend. They're tangible reminders of the night a millionaire cowboy found a desperate healer in a blizzard. Jack passed away in 1923 at the age of 86, and Libby followed him just 3 months later. They were buried hand in hand overlooking the massive ranch they built together. On their shared headstone, their children had this final inscription carved: "Forever and always, a love that made history." It really leaves us with a powerful question to think about. How much of the American West was actually built not by outlaws and gunfights, but by quiet acts of kindness and the fierce resilience of forgotten healers?